for me, coaching, it's creating the third space for a person. Right? That first space is going to be home. Who are the people that love to take care of you, that know how to get home like that? That's the first space. The second space is where you're making your living. What's the craft? What's the profession? What's the thing that you do every day that you enjoy, that you want to do more of? And the third space, that's where I need to talk to someone. And it's not at home because they don't want to hear about work. And it's not work because they don't want to hear about home. So it's that third space where I can kind of step back and exhale. That's where I think coaches, consultants, life coaches, that skilled helper kind of fills the gap with people.
You are and will always be your most valuable asset. Welcome to the Meaning Podcast. I'm Nigel Franklin, a CPA, MBA, and a certified emotional intelligence coach. Join me for a series of inspiring conversations with individuals embracing the ups and downs of life. Gain insights and perspectives into how you can lead a happier and more fulfilled life while exploring the importance of emotional intelligence to navigate the challenges and opportunities that come your way with greater ease and resilience. So I'm super excited about today's conversation. Today I have with me John Hughes, the president of EI Assessments, the MHS training partner on emotional intelligence, and a senior lecturer at Texas A&M School of Engineering. My pleasure to introduce John Hughes, my emotional intelligence guru. Man, John, welcome. Welcome to the show. So, John, thank you for agreeing to sit in and chat with me today. Again, for the audience, always just the backstory into how these individuals are popping up on the show. Apart from doing my certification to administer the EQI 2.0 report back in 2020, I sat with John for my first assessment in 2014. And everything has been very different since then. I think I've used John as a consultant. He's talked to my teams. He's talked to the affinity groups that I've led at different companies. He's done assessments for not just my staff in the US, but in Indonesia. He's had those conversations. And wherever I am in the world, John, I'd look forward to your note every now and again. Hey, how are you doing? How you're making out? So I appreciate you. And the conversations were some really enlightening conversations. So thank you and welcome. Excited to have this conversation with you today.
Same here. I forgot about Indonesia.
You forgot about Indonesia? Indonesia was a good one. I think that's probably the first time you did an assessment like that.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. And what came out of the assessment, the action plan, was also even more fascinating, the cultural dexterity of it. So tell everyone, who is John Hughes?
It's funny because the executive coach piece is where I am right now. I've been doing the executive coaching work, I guess, since 2008 is when I started the firm. And it's the best job I've ever had. It's one of those things where I always wanted to be able to say that.
Yeah.
And I've been able to say it throughout most of my life. But I never wanted the last job to be the best job. I worked for the New York Times, which was just fantastic. I thought that was going to be the best job. That was a long time ago, it seems to be. But yeah, I also define myself as a boyfriend. My wife, right? We met in 1972. So
Okay.
she remembers when I carried a comb.
Right.
So we met at a high school dance that my mother insisted I go to. So I always think that was funny. So my mother insisted I go to a dance. I ended up marrying a girl I meet there.
Yeah.
And that's we got married in 1979. So I define myself by my relationship. And number one, I think it's my girlfriend. I still refer to her as my girlfriend. And then family man, pop, your granddaughter. And I'm in a really good, spot in my life in terms of having done all the corporate stuff and everything that you had to do to get your kids through college and pay your mortgage and all that. And it's more of a giving opportunity, this part of life. There's something about paying it back at the next level, whatever that. And I think, again, that's that elder statesman, village elder feeling around the emotion, the EQI.
Yeah. And I'm definitely we're going to dive into the EQI part of it. But in your career, so you were at the New York Times, and maybe just share a little bit about the career arc. Again, what have you done? What are some of the things to get you to this point?
Yeah, it's funny. When I got my undergraduate degree in psychology, I went out and got a couple of jobs working for the Association for the Help of Children, opening up a group home in College Point, right? And then I own a college calls me back and says, would you like to run our dormitory program? So I said, sure. So I go back to run the dormitory program, which gives me an opportunity to do my graduate work in counseling. So I complete my graduate work in counseling, and same year our daughter was born. I had to decide, am I going to stay in academia or am I going to try to give corporate a shot? And there was a member of, I guess, one of the board, the college board. I own a college is where I worked. It's now I own the university. And a friend of a friend connected me with this trustee who happened to work for IBM. And I approached the trustee. And with just a long story, it got me a connection to IBM, and I went in for an interview. And next thing I know, I had one of the lowest level jobs available in IBM. So low, I got my first promotion, I think 2 weeks into the job, because I was doing work no one else wanted to do. So I slowly made my way up, and maybe 4 years into, and that was in stockholder relations. And I moved over to international assignments, and international assignments gave me my management position. And then I got a job at the New York Times as a staff trainer, doing stuff that hadn't been done before. I was working with unions. I was working out at the production plants, and next thing I know, I got the attention of they wanted me to do leadership training at the time. I ended up meeting all the executives, and it was a great opportunity. That's when I realized I'm working with the executives. That's why I'm going to call myself an executive coach, because I'm doing coaching.
So this was when you were at the New York Times.
Okay. Yeah. The golden age, the final age of newspaper in a way, because it was right before the internet. It was 1998 that they made $1 billion in advertising revenue.
Oh, wow.
New York Times, $1 billion. I have a watch they gave me to celebrate $1 billion in revenue. And after that, boom, just dropped like a stone. Then you could see it coming, that sooner or later we have to downsize. So I had an opportunity in 2008. Do you want to stay and help downsize the organization? Which I did with IBM, which is a terrible thing to see an organization go through. Or do you want to leave? 2008, I took a buyout and I left, and that gave me the cushion to start the business. And and it's feast of famine. That's what they say for consulting. So you got to be able to believe in yourself. You got to be able to believe in your product and have good relationships and have a trampoline, because you're going to have some tough time out there. And early on, when I think about 2008, I'd go anywhere for $1. Yeah, I traveled 2 or 3 hours just to charge for 1 hour. I remember once charging, you're going back for 8 hours to visit a client to charge for 2 hours. You got to do what you have to do.
What's the mindset? How do you move from counseling to the corporate world? What's the mindset shift?
Yeah, it's interesting, because when moving into corporate, I wanted stability. My daughter, I wanted a 401k. It's funny, I wanted to wear a suit every day. There was something about my father going into the city every day. My father always wore a business suit. Even when he was out of work, he wore a business suit. So there's something about that was just part of the uniform, man. Working down on, was it not off Park, Fifth Avenue was where the IBM building was, 59th Street. And just going in there every day, what I was supposed to do. My father went in and out of the city. I went in and out of the city. I got a white collar job, and man, it was rough. It really was.
It was rough you just didn't fit into the space, because
I didn't go to business school. I got my degree in psychology. What the heck am I doing in IBM? It's like I interviewed well.
Okay. So you're learning a lot.
I was learning a lot. Yeah. So there's survival skills, because here's the thing. My family always just like a lot of families, they want you to be an engineer, or not so much an engineer, want to be a doctor or a lawyer. So it's the same thing in my family. 2 of my brothers are lawyers. Well, I'm never going to be a lawyer. Okay, how do you survive? It's people skills. It's not on my intellect. It's on my smile.
I like that. It's not on your intellect, but on your smile.
I was in academia. I had the beard. I was smoking a pipe. I had the leather patches. It was wonderful. And I look around academia. What I saw of it was very limiting to me. So I was running the dormitory. I remember once walking the back of campus, looking around the campus saying, is this it?
Yeah.
I was like 25, 26 years old. Is this it? I'm going to be campus the rest of my life? No, because I don't know what's going to happen next, but this isn't the end of it.
So you jumped from the frying pan into the fire?
Because I remember declaring at the beginning of the academic year, I'm not going to be here at the end of the year. I'm going to leave. Where are we going? I have no idea. My dormitory, by living on campus and all this, my housing was connected to the college and all. But declaring, I'm not going to be here. Man, that's like, as they say, jumping off a cliff and building your wings on the way down, because you're not having that, that cushion, that annual contract for the campus all of a sudden. And then it was before I met this gentleman who gave me the break that I had for IBM. And that was a story where I sacrificed for someone on a Christmas day, and it came back to me with an IBM interview. It was just a funny
sacrificed someone?
Yeah, it was like it was my daughter's first Christmas, right? We're on campus. And so we drive down to Queens to celebrate our daughter's first Christmas and all. But the day before, an IBM executive had said, listen, are there any kids on campus for Christmas Day that would like to come to our house for Christmas? And I said, so sure. I had a guy from Ethiopia, had a guy from Puerto Rico, I had 3 guys that have anything for Christmas. So what I did is I drove down to Queens, dropped off my daughter, drove back up to New Rochelle, got the guys to the executive's house, had a beer and whatever, and then came back down and picked up my daughter. So the executive said, wait, you went back and forth all day Christmas just so these guys were going to have a good Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah. He goes, listen, if you ever want to come to IBM, give me a call.
Yeah.
I said, really? Yeah. I said, give me a call. So 6 months later, I reached out to him. I gave him a call and he gave me an interview. And he set me up with other interviews. Next thing I know, I was working for IBM.
It's interesting how connections, interpersonal relationships, acts of kindness, it doesn't come back in the same way. And if you're looking for it, sometimes it can get in the way of you being kind.
Yep.
But still, that transition, looking back now, how do you manage it?
Wow. I think a lot of it had to do with my wife, because she's one of these people where she knows I have a flexible, creative, innovative, nutty side. And she just lets it go. She doesn't try to shut it down, because a lot of it is just, what if we did this? What if we ever started a business? Yeah, the business is just about emotion. What if? And she goes, okay, yeah, what if you keep thinking? That's what she says. Keep thinking, keep dreaming, she says. Keep dreaming, keep visualizing. She's always encouraging. So she encourages me to the point where I exhaust myself. And then that's where the beauty comes in. The magic is a lot of stuff that she and I have wanted to do. We've accomplished it. And that's just having a nice home, happy kids, 2 dogs. That's nice. What's your ultimate goal? And also to be in a situation where now I'm being able to help the helpers, help coaches, coach other people.
You looking back, what are some of those things that you took and you learned at those earlier points in your career?
That I'm really good with people, and that you want to honor that in many ways. Every time everyone gives me time, even now, I thank the executives for their time, because they let me in. And Iona, the rawness of Iona in this environment, it was like a laboratory for counseling. It was believing in people to want to come together, believing that I had something that was different from other people in terms of bringing things together, bring people together. Some people are great at math. I'm terrible at math. Some people are great in information technology, structure, my organizing, can't do any of that. But when it comes to working with people, there's something about my ability to allow myself to get into their world, them allowing me to get in. It's kind of special.
What are the lessons that you're getting at that period of time, and how do you roll them forward to now?
In IBM, I got my leadership, my management stripe, and I was just thrown into the deep end. I was thrown into 8 people that were older than me, more experienced than me, that probably wanted the job that I was given. But it's on-the-job training or management by under fire, whatever. But I ran with it, and I did the best I could. And then I took on a second team after I gave up that team, moved on to another team, which is a little nicer in terms of having people report to you. And then I started to realize, that this is, and at the same time, I had just finished supporting executives that were going on international assignments to Japan. So this is a group of 75 executives working and living in Japan. And they'd email me every day. I get issues about their benefits, their housing, their whatever. So I started to get into the executive's brain. And these guys were insecure, neurotic. Some were power hungry, some were power of avoiding. But I realized talking to these executives, I remember one of the executives called me up and they had like a minimal amount of, if you're an executive going to Tokyo for 2 years, they gave you 1,500 pounds of stuff you can take. Over 1,500 pounds, you'd have to pay for it. So I get this executive, and the executive calls me up and goes, the movers are here and I have 2,000 pounds worth of stuff and I'm not leaving here till you okay it. And I haven't got the power of okay it. I'm just a staff guy. So I could put the movers on. And the movers get on and goes, this guy's going crazy. We can't move his stuff. You got to give the authority, give him 2,000 pounds. I said, what's he moving over? The guy's a weightlifter. He's moving his weights to Tokyo. And if you don't approve him, I said, okay, man, listen, I'll improve it. Give him 2,000 pounds, get him out of there. So I caught heck from the management, IBM or whatever. I probably got dinged on my performance management report, but that's why I saw the craziness of the organization sticking to policies, and also the fragility of these guys going over to Japan. And all he could think about was his weights got to be there when I arrive, So I started getting insights into these executives with it, just like everybody else. It just have a lot more power, a lot more authority, a lot more responsibility. It means you're paid more responsible, but it doesn't mean you're pushing the buttons quicker or getting things done any faster. So I got a chance up close to see these executives going on international assignment. And that's when I realized one-on-one individually, wow. You could use a coach or a counselor or something.
I'm sure there's someone listening who is in that role where they just took on a team and they're managing. I think it was probably one of the more challenging experiences that I've had in my life. One of the companies I went to, I was new to the industry. Someone who reported into me probably wanted the job as well. How do you manage that?
I had to stick with acknowledging what I didn't know. If you're a senior elder in IBM and I'm in my mid-20s and I'm just trying to survive, and you want You want to be a hard-nosed on you, do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, I can't let it rattle me. I can't get mad. Because there's certain emotions that you learn to manage your frustrations, even though you have those conversations inside. Externally, you're smiling and you're nodding your head. Internally, you want to reach across the table and grab somebody. So it's knowing how to manage those emotions. But it's also realizing that sometimes people want to see you dance when they're more to you as a manager. Right. Sometimes people just want to pull your chain. It's knowing when this is a serious issue. Is this something that's going to be gone tomorrow? Is it a hill to die on? I mean, it's the issue at stake here. You got to put things into perspective. I think that's what I probably learned.
How hard is that perspective to come by?
Lonely, man. That's why for me, coaching, it's creating the third space for a person. Right? That first space is going to be home. Who are the people that love to take care of you, that know how to get up like that? That's the first space. The second space is where you're making your living. What's the craft? What's the profession? What's the thing that you do every day that you enjoy, that you want to do more of? And the third space, that's where I need to talk to someone. And it's not at home because they don't want to hear about work. And it's not work because they don't want to hear about home. So it's that third space where I can kind of step back and exhale. That's where I think coaches, consultants, life coaches, that skilled helper kind of fills the gap with people.
I'm going to steal that one, by the way, John. I always steal stuff. So that third space to just sit back and exhale. At what point did that come to you?
Yep. I think that the whole third space concept's only come to me the last couple of years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's when I realized what's the value that I'm bringing to my clients. And what I've noticed that executive coaches have, that I have on this score here, emotional self-awareness. What I have, regardless of the executive's background, and I've spoken to some brilliant people just within their fields, MIT, Lincoln Lab, these people aren't scary brilliant. So what do I give them or what I bring to them? It's the acknowledgement and the sharing of emotional self-awareness. It's letting you know you're a very powerful executive. Are you aware of the power that you have? Are you aware of the impact that you have on the culture? Do you know that you have an opportunity to accomplish things? And sometimes they say, yeah, that's where emotional self-awareness comes full throttle because it's their brand, it's their presence. The skill that I think executive coaches share with their clients is that I have to have, my emotional self-awareness needs to be higher than my clients. That's when coaches reach out to me and they want to do emotional intelligence stuff or they want to be a coach. The two areas I focus on are emotional self-awareness and empathy. Are you comfortable in the emotional space? Are you comfortable talking about emotion?
If you learned it only the last couple of years ago, how are you managing the change going back then as you're moving from place to place or experience to experience?
I think it's more of an evolution. It feels like at times where I think I probably said to my wife, I'm a better coach now than I was 10 years ago. It's evolved that way. So there's a certain amount of, I guess there's always been part of me, the emotional piece. I've always been very comfortable in that space. I don't know. That's something I got to think about in terms of.
But it's because I think it's almost like there's a curiosity or a need to help that sometimes fuels that. So So that's what I'm curious about. What's fueling the evolution? Right?
That's always been
what's your why?
A weird part of me, man. Ever since I was, I think the first time I was introduced to a state-run mental health facility was when I was 13 years old. I was volunteering, and I got a chance to work with sweet kids that I think their parents were incarcerated at 13. By the time I was 16, 17, I was working in Creedmoor State Hospital as a volunteer. Back in the 70s, we're talking 1973, 1974, they would warehouse autistic children in these huge wards. Mm-hmm. They would just throw kids into it, and I would come in working with an occupational therapist to try to understand what's autism all about, what causes it, how do you work with kids. So I think autism studies were in their infancy back in the 70s. But I've always had the curiosity. So that went into psychology in high school. Then I tried to be a business major for one semester. Right? That didn't work. I tried to be an accountant for a semester. I mean, come on.
You just remember, I'm still an accountant.
Yeah, I know.
The curiosity, if it's fueling your evolution, how do you stay curious?
My father was in advertising for his entire career. So that's all about delivering the message. That's all about a certain amount of presentation, a certain amount of engagement. So where I am now with building things, or I do something different, I find it very exciting. There's something about it that, I get to communicate this differently, or I've just unlocked this concept for somebody, or I have a visual that's really engaging. And if I find it fun, I'm looking for other people. Hey, do you find this interesting? Is this data interesting? I find it interesting because that's where you get that engagement. That's why my wife's tired of this. I could go to my wife every 5 minutes. Don't you find this fun? She's sick of it. No.
So,
Yeah, it's all fun. It's all fun. But yeah, no, I think I just get naturally excited, particularly about the topic, because for me, this topic of emotional intelligence, we all have it. Again, that's part of it as well. It's something that's there. It's something that we use every day. It's something that always bugs me when people are sent to me because they were told they didn't have emotional intelligence. I said, who told you this? Well, my manager told me I don't have emotional intelligence. So there's something about that since we all have it, we can all develop it. That's pretty exciting, because when I was young, it was either math or linguistics that was going to get you through your co-op exams, through the SATs, math and linguistics. So finding that word intelligence to apply to something other than just words and numbers, I think it's been very exciting for me.
In 2008, you started EI assessments.
Yep.
How, at that point in time, was the focus, although it's leadership coaching or executive coaching, where does the emotional intelligence come in?
When I started in 2008, and this is the power of a summer intern. In 2007, I had a summer intern and took her all the meetings. So I treated her as a member of the staff when she was at New York Times. And again, she was a summer intern. So next summer, she's working at Major League Baseball. And in Major League Baseball, they were focused on diversity. So she's a summer intern over Major League Baseball saying, you know this guy, John Hughes, over at the New York Times?
Okay.
And she was interning with Wendy Lewis, who was the Senior Vice President of Strategic Partnerships and Diversity for Major League Baseball. So this is what I'm still at the time. So she invites me over to do a presentation. So I'd come up with a presentation called Blue Eyes, Brown Eyes about the work of Jane Elliott. And she thought it was great, right? And she says to me, listen, if you ever leave the New York Times, give me a call. I'd love to work with you. So about 4 months later, I called her up and said, listen, left the New York Times. I want to work with you. Uh-huh. So that was like around February, March of 2008. Then I would call her once a month or stop by once a month. I gave her EQI. So every month from March 2008 till September of 2008, she calls me up and says, hey, want to come to Houston Astros with me? Do the EQI for the front office? Yeah, sure. That sounds good. So I'm jumping up and down because, hey, I finally have a client. I finally have data. I told this is what you're looking for as a client. So I did with all the Major League Baseballs. Eventually, we visited the front offices of 12 Major League Baseball teams, which was great. I just wish I was a baseball fan. So it was a great opportunity. It was my first client. It was the first time I stood in front of an audience and said, hey, I'm president of EI Assessments. Oh, wow. That was wild. That was a weird feeling. In 1997 was when I was certified when I was at the New York Times. There's a difference between internal coaching and external coaching. And plus, I'm getting used to the data. So if I'm working with someone who has low impulse control, low assertiveness, I'm working with someone that, I don't know, you're trying to figure people out through the data. So I'm really young in terms of trying to figure out the data and trying to translate, giving value to the conversation. So it's taken years of those conversations to realize, yeah, when you look at the data, there is commonality between some of these lines. When I used to ask people, explain why this is so high. Why do you think this is high? Why do you think this is low? And you start to hear certain stories that people have in common that, yeah, my mother always talked about emotion. My father was always there's usually someone in their past that has reinforced some of these skills, which is the genesis of where we've developed some of these. But that's why it all comes back to emotional self-awareness. It's like one of those anchor scores that, yeah, that's a topic that everyone can connect with.
So we come back to emotional self-awareness. How do you define emotional self-awareness?
To me, it's my brand. It's my executive presence. And the fascinating thing is that now with Zoom, I see everybody's emotional self-awareness. As soon as you show up on the screen, I'm ready to comment on it as soon as I see people. And I'll say, wow, you are strong. You've thought about this call. High emotional self-awareness, they're constantly planning, they're constantly looking ahead. They understand the culture and understand the power they have. They weren't ready to engage. Boom, it's there. Other people, low emotional self-awareness, you see that as well. They show up a little bit, I wouldn't say kinder, but just not passive, but just a little bit quieter, not as strong. It's a hard thing to define sometimes. And meanwhile, the self-regard can be really strong. So I could be looking at a very powerful executive, yet their emotional self-awareness is kind of not very strong. I get something to talk about because I'm feeling it. I'm seeing you. And you could pick it up off a Zoom screen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, if you really focus on something, you're listening to that person, you don't want to talk about it. You can get into that level where you allow yourself to almost feel another person's energy. That's it. I've had some situations where I've had to go to the speaker afterwards and I'm saying, listen, do you believe in aura? Mm-hmm. She'll say, yeah. I just sort of allowed to yell around you. Oh, so good. That feels, there's something about that. Some people connect with it right away, but it allows, I think, high levels of empathy, because I've told people, allow yourself to listen to people. That's what empathy is. Allow yourself to take in someone, just not the words, just not the moment, but what's that other person feeling? It takes about another 15 seconds, not the time. It's just consciously letting yourself feel what the other person's feeling.
What makes you curious about this part of coaching? What about the human condition? You were saying, okay, this is how I think I'll have an impact.
Yeah, because I'm convinced we all have a level of genius inside us. The concept of genius being that we all have something inside us that we're really good at. And that maybe it's intellectual, maybe it's artistic, maybe it's visual, maybe it's mechanical, it's all different ways, but it's knowing that we all have that. And it's curious. My curiosity is what's keeping you from releasing yours.
Oh, wow.
Know? It's like what's getting in your way. Because when I do an EQI report, my whole thing is, okay, what do you want to be 3 years from now? I want to be this. Okay, what's going to get you there?
Okay. So what was getting in your way at the time? And how were you managing that?
Fortunately, part of it was time. Because I think to be an executive coach, you need to get a little gray on you. You need to have some more stories. You need to mess up a little bit with some clients. You know? You need to have a few regrets. So I think part of it is realizing that you have to go with a level of confidence. And like everyone else with the imposter syndrome, including myself, I go with a level of confidence, but I don't know everything. So you got to be able to have a little bit of a poker face.
So what was one of the big mistakes that you've made? And how did you rebound from it?
My biggest mistake I can think of, and I've been to Europe twice in the last 10 years since leaving the New York Times. I'm not allowed in anymore. They threw me out because this is my chance to work with a team right now. And so here's a guy born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, and goes to school in Westchester, living in Dutchess. I'm a New York-centric kind of guy. Now I find myself in Belgium or Amsterdam. I don't remember where I was. But it was a team. It was a European team. That's why you learned the difference between Northern France and Southern France. You don't get those confused. And then it was someone from Spain, two people from the UK. So it was like a good global team there. And I was convinced I was there to do any conflict management. And I was convinced there was no conflict. Everyone told me there's no conflict on the team, right? So I was as an external consultant, that's what you want to hear. There's no conflict, right? Even though Mary joined the team and took somebody else's job that she thought was going to get promoted. So Mary and Maria, you weren't sure how they were going, but they're both cool. Everyone's great. So I spend 3 days with them. No conflict. Everyone commits to goals, roles, no responsibility, all that stuff. Get on the plane. Then a week later, they're in Barcelona, Mary and Maria, arguing over a cab. And Maria says to me, "You took my cab just like you took my job." So boom, this conflict blew up in the Barcelona airport instead of me uncovering it when we were together. So then I realized, man, when you're working with people like that, conflict is there. I learned that from that experience. Conflict is always in a team. It's a matter of you as a consultant uncovering it and working through it. Because I wanted to hear there was no conflict. I wanted to think I had nothing to work. No, there was a lot of conflict there, but people are really good at covering it up.
So you're thinking, you were creating the narrative for yourself based on your talk. How does that make you feel then? And how do you bounce back from that?
Then you start coming up with, you do reading, and then you start coming up with your own rules and regulations when you work with teams. When I work with teams, I'm looking for, do you have really good people on this team? Are you really clear on your goals and objectives? Why does the team exist? Are you clear on roles and responsibilities? Do you know what everyone else is doing on the team and why they're doing it? Are you clear on decision-making, individual decision, collective decision? And is there a conflict management protocol? Because there's always going to be conflict. And I learned it because conflict only occurs in organizations or environments where people care. When people don't care, you're not going to find conflict. It's not worth their energy. But when people, in professional settings, when people care, they want their opinion heard. They want to be considered. In which case, it's the conflict management piece.
That's actually really good. I'm always fascinated. Conflict happens in an environment where people care. That's so simply stated, but still so powerful.
I'm a simple person.
Simple books. Tell me anything. What's cool is that you're going through it. I'm always curious about what helps you to find your way to something, right? Mm-hmm. Back to the EQI portion of it. What led you to getting certified? So you care about people, obviously. That's from the psychology, the counseling portion of it. But now you're looking at that. And although it's big now, it wasn't, I guess Daniel Goleman was, he was doing a lot of work then or starting to publish stuff then, but it wasn't as in vogue as it is now.
No,
right?
He wrote Emotional Intelligence in 1995. He came out with working with Emotional Intelligence in 1996. And then he got to work on building an instrument, which was eventually called the ECI, right? Meanwhile, in 1997, I get certified in the EQI. So I'm already working with an instrument that's exactly what I wanted to measure something. So to me, when I saw this instrument for the first time, I just clicked with it because, first of all, the language was straightforward. The other reason, I'll be completely honest with this as well, when I started as a consultant, I had to decide for myself, am I going to invest in the EQI or the MBTI? And the MBTI, you have to learn 16 different styles, 16 different ENTJ, INF, whatever it is, right? I was afraid I couldn't remember all the styles. Okay. So since I'm not going to remember the MBTI, at least I can read an EQI report. It's going to be very straightforward to me, right? It's got the bars too. Some people like to look at stuff.
So it's visual. Okay.
It's visual and the data. And over time, the data started to make sense to me. Now I just look at page 3 and I go, wow. Or I go, ooh.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I look at page 3, I say to people, how hard do you want me to be on you? Oh, be really hard. Really be hard. Listen, you got to stop yelling at people because it's that kind of a thing. But so it's been fun kind of evolving, looking at the data, understanding myself, understanding people. And age has helped as well. I think that's a big thing, is now I push people more as a coach than I did a couple of years ago.
And what's different in that?
But sometimes it's around the assertiveness line, because that could be a hard thing to deliver. If my assertiveness is 120 and my empathy is 80, right? It's a big gap there. I might have a very subtle way of trying to tell you that you're a bully.
Okay.
Your style overly directive, I might say.
Yeah, I think maybe the idea, how I define and talk about emotional intelligence now, is appreciating and understanding the impact of emotions on you and others around you, and then directing that emotional energy to getting things done. But that's my simply stated way of saying it. How are you now defining emotional intelligence, and then how has it evolved over time?
Yeah, I think I now define it more. I used to say people skills. I think it's more than that. I like to see it as a set of professional skills that we all have in us that have evolved to a certain level through our life experiences, and that we can build to a higher level if we want to. Every once in a while, a lot of times, a client will say, "Look at my report. I'll analyze the report." They'll say, "What should I be doing differently?" I don't know. Are you having any upset in your life or anything not working out? This is okay. Let's look at that. But I'm not here to tell you what you should be doing differently. So that. I had a client recently that looked at a report and said, okay, where's my goals? I'm not giving you goals. What do you think you should be doing?
Right.
About me. So that also tells you a certain amount that gives you insight into the client as well as about how he or she sees themselves. Are you engaged or not? Because some people, you can look at the data, which is one of the things that getting old and looking at a lot of data is I'll look at the data and I'll say, I think this person's going to be X, Y, Z. They're going to be loud, not going to be listening. Sure enough, loud and not listening to me to all the things I predicted. So my thing is, okay, how do I get them to realize that this is an opportunity they might be missing? And my thing is how would your leadership style benefit if you spent 10 more seconds listening to me? What would that bring to you? It's kind of pulling them in with the features and benefits kind of thing every once in a while.
Right.
So my old sales skills selling comes through as well.
Could you please do me a small favor? If you're appreciating the content so far, please like and share with someone who may find this conversation beneficial. Thank you. I like to say you have a professional and a personal life. I do believe that you just have one life.
Yep.
And the sooner you can actually live those two in congruence, or you treat them as one, the happier or the more productive you'll be. You can have more energy to do all the things that you want to do. But what's John learning just himself, like as life is evolving, you're on your own now and you're doing this coaching. How are you managing you?
Yeah, you got some tiring days there because it's still a business, right? You're looking for clients all the time. So you always have that in a way. I remember when I started consulting, the coach that I worked with for 3 months, we did not start a business. So it was great having a coach that I can go to. She was terrific. She told you the 3 hats. One is administrative, one is sales, and one is doing. So the administrative is taxes, and it's all the back office stuff, which hopefully Debbie takes care of. And then the doing stuff, I love to do it all the time, but it's the selling stuff. That's the second hat. That's the more difficult one. That's why I'm not a direct seller. I sell by reputation. I sell by offering the EQI for free to people. That to me has been my greatest sales point. I think the first year I had enough in the bank to be able to give the EQI to anybody who wanted to take it. And as a result of that, they said, this was valuable to me or would be valuable to your team. Well, why don't we do your team? So it's been leveraged all over the place. So
it was interesting when you said that. I think I did about 60 in the first year, maybe a little bit more. And a lot of them in that same model that you've actually presenting. But how do you manage in just in that first year, right? Doing a lot of it for free.
Yep.
But you still have to make progress. How are you managing How are you managing you? What's your thinking? What's going on in John's head, right?
Back then I was still drinking.
So you were drinking a lot.
So I was drinking consistently. That's been years ago. Drinking therapeutic. No, let me see. Yeah, there were some moments where I started in 2008.
Crisis, you know what? It's crazy. It seems so far away now, but no. Okay, 2008.
So people said to me, "Why are you trying to start a business? Go out, go get an HR job somewhere. You still got some years left in HR. I want to go back to HR. I want to start my own business." So it was realizing that this now or never. It was the same year I think my son graduated college. We had minimal. We had no tuitions left to pay, so that was great. But also, when I married Debbie, when I met Debbie, I always wanted to run a business with her. Mm-hmm. Always. It's just a matter of what we were going to do. And she's old school bookkeeping, so she takes care of the books, and it's been a great partnership. But I couldn't have done it without her, because you have to have someone. But even I need that third space. She doesn't want to, where do I go to talk to people about what's going on? I don't want to share with her, or she doesn't want to. You listen to, which I understand. Yeah.
So you've worked with your wife this entire time since starting it.
Yes.
So there's really a need for the third space then. It's just hitting me now. Yeah. So there's definitely okay. And how do you keep, because everyone always thinks that that separation of the personal and professional stuff, but you're working with your wife. That means you're in the same space often. And how do you keep things going? How do you manage the relationship in conflict?
It's funny. For a while there, we're pretty successful. We don't talk about the business on weekends. So we're trying to keep, because you're living it so much.
Yeah.
We know each other well enough that I could read her and say, no, she doesn't want to talk about the business.
Okay.
Or she'll say, hey, let's talk about the business. And all of a sudden we'll engage around EQI, because she logs in all the data here, all the spreadsheets. Okay. I pass off the report to her. She does all the data.
So that's your database.
Yeah. She's inputted over 3,000 EQI reports.
Oh, wow. So all the research you're doing
is my rock. If she wasn't doing it, I have stacks of EQI reports sitting around here looking for something to input. But it's been great.
Since you've been doing it, or since you started EI assessment, is there a time when you thought of going back to what you were doing before? Or what happens when you're starting and it's not moving as quickly in the direction that you want it to move?
Okay.
Then
fair enough. And that's when you pivot to, that's when I think I'm probably at my most creative, because now I realize I got to create a buzz or make a dent or reconnect with someone or offer something for free. Or that's where the creative juices really start flowing. You're reaching out to my network. Your network reaches out to you. What are you doing? So it's checking in with people and knowing that you're there, because when people know that I'm there for them, my assumption is that they're going to be there for me when I need them. You know what I mean? It's just good karma. That's part of it. And that's the darndest thing, is that the way I've rolled forward, I have very little work in the future, but something always seems to happen in the moment, or always seems to carry on. And that's scary sometimes. It's the life of a consultant. I've had some really good clients retire. Oh man, don't retire. Come on, get a couple more years. Right. Because they brought me in and it's going really well. I've had a nice long gig with Comcast for the last couple of years. So that should continue. So yeah, you start to get into organizations, and your billing is important. You don't want to overbill. You don't want to assume that you're going to gouge your client at any point. I've been told that sometimes I don't charge enough, which I don't want Debbie to hear that either.
But, she's going to hear it now.
But it's good karma. It's going to come back to me. I just have to believe it.
I like the fact so karma and the spirituality stuff keeps popping up.
Yeah.
How do you approach that? Because again, if you're going out and you're taking chances, you're putting things out in the universe, hoping that it will come back, or with the faith that it will come back. But what's the basis of it? How do you explain that?
I'm here based on a vision I had 20 years ago. I'm doing today what I wanted to do today 20 years ago. And always, when I got certified in EQI, I always wanted to be able to say, I want this to be my cornerstone. I want to do nothing but talk about emotional intelligence. I want people to realize what's inside them. I want every kid that's ever gotten a bad grade in math and verbal to realize there's so many other things in life important to them, how delicate self-regard is, and how I think we spend our entire lives trying to figure out the first 10 years of our life. You know what I mean? So there's a lot back there. People looking for validation. And I've had great mentors in my life and great validators. And I think I want to be one of the validators out.
Self-regard for someone, because that's one of the things that we've talked about.
Yep.
How your upbringing, your nationality, whether or not you're a first generation or second generation immigrant. Like how it all plays into that internal voice.
Sure.
How do you define self-regard if it's so important?
I think I hear both my parents' voices. My mother's voice would be, don't ever forget you're a descendant of Irish kings. You know,
Right.
something about that pride. Don't ever forget that. But if you owned a chicken in Ireland, you were a king. You know, but there's something about the concept. I'm 5, 6 years old. I'm a descendant of Irish kings, right? So I'm better than everybody. Then as I got older, I remember my father taking me aside saying, hey, listen, don't ever think you're better than anybody. Okay. Right? Because he told us another side of life. Don't ever, there's certain words that weren't used in my house. You never heard the N-word in my house, certain things that you just did not do in front of my father because he was that kind of a guy. So again, one year you're better than everyone, the other year you're better than nobody. In between, where are you going to go? I pivoted to my father. You know, my siblings pivoted to my mother, but I pivoted to my father, which is, I'm not better than anybody, so I got to work with people.
What are you learning now about the same self-regard conversation? And why I say that, so one of the more powerful books that I recently read is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Okay. Ooh.
But I read that in the pandemic.
Okay.
And that perspective view of life is really interesting, right? Because you really can't solve for anything that's yesterday. Yep. All you have is the current moment and what you're going to do going forward.
Yep.
So how do you talk to individuals about that voices or those voices that are pulling them back or pushing them to something?
You know, it's on my shelf inside for my granddaughter. The name of the book is You Are Enough.
Oh, wow.
Okay. It's got all different pictures. So it's something about it. I want her, you are enough. You don't have to be anybody. Yeah, there's something about you that's accepting. You have to accept yourself, right? In fact, again, her mother's Ugandan. And I guess about 3 or 4 years ago, she's sitting on a couch between Debbie and she looks up at me and she says, Pop, am I rich? So what, sweetie? She said, am I rich? And I don't know what I look at Debbie, what's she saying? Debbie says, she wants to know if she's Irish. And I said, sweetie, yeah, you're a little Irish. Daddy's Irish and my grandpa. So I was kind of stumbling through it. And yeah. Then so she's looking at TV. She looks back. She goes, what if I want to be black? Is it okay if I want to be, if I'm black? And I realized this is a race conversation I'm having here with my son. And I said, you bet you can be black. You can be everything you want. And all of a sudden, that was a validation. And she smiled and you be whatever you want. That's what she wanted to hear from me. I don't care about the Irish thing is all confusing to her. But she could see her mom. She could see herself. And so there's something about that acceptance that she wanted to hear from me, that validation piece. But she was so happy to hear you could be anybody you want.
Do you think that there's danger in that? Because there has to be some part of it, some governor, right, pulling you back.
There's that self-regard thing. Here's the thing. Either you're over-validated in life or you're under-validated in life. People are over-validated and you're great, you're beautiful, you're brilliant. You go and if you face your first job interview, guess what? You're not that brilliant. You're not that great. Whatever. So you're validated. Other people never got that validation. And they're out there seeking it, which it creates a different kind of a gap.
Are there things that you're learning as you coaching different generations and you're seeing that? Is it different? So if you take, for instance, and I apologize for anyone who's Gen Z listened to it, but for a long time, like I didn't accept participation trophies because it was not something that I did growing up. So I would do all these races and I would cross the finish line and someone will say, they wanted to give me the medal and I would turn it away because I was like, no, thank you. Because I'm like, I did the race to finish. I'm not really, I don't know why I would just celebrate finishing. And I had to redress that with myself, right? Because it's a different way of seeing it. But the way that then if I look internally, I'd say the way that I would communicate, the way that I would support someone, even I think there was someone that I was dating at a time and they thought that I wasn't happy enough for what they accomplished. And in my head, I was like, but I knew you were going to accomplish it. Why would we celebrate something like keeping the bar low? But I'm just asking because obviously my self-regard, the training as an athlete, all this other stuff, it does play out into so many other areas of life. And not just for me, for others. But are you finding that there's delineation generationally in the people that you're coaching?
Yeah, it's funny. The people who I have, the younger people who have taken through their EQI, what you're wrestling with there, because they're in the midst of the pandemic as well. So last 2 or 3 years, in that context, there's a lot of insecurity about the future. So if pre-2020 March, I had my goals set, I had my career path set, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Now, 2023, hopefully I've been able to morph into a different plan because I think that's what's happening is a younger, earlier generation, however you want to describe them. What is the social path that's going to be out there that's going to create jobs and opportunities for me? What's happening out there? That's messy right now. And that's going to play into, it's going to affect businesses. It's going to affect so many different things. It's going to affect how I see the future. So what I'm seeing now is younger people, the younger generation, it's seeing it a shakier future. Maybe it's always been a shaky future. It just seems shakier now. I see based on their data, their empathy is dropping, their emotional self-awareness is dropping. Seeing some real scores that it hurt. There's loss out there people are experiencing. And that's going to take a while to repair and come back. So no one wants to hear time, but time is one of those things, hopefully, that we'll find a way of rebounding because, yeah, a lot of insecurity in different pockets of society out there, understandable.
And then how do you connect with that? There are some people who've seen it before, who are weathering the storm, and the individuals who are uncertain about it, right? So how do you bridge that gap for those two groups?
There has to be a willingness to share with what you're going through. In other words, I'm not going to give anybody advice on how I got to where I got, but I do want to hear what you're going through right now. So getting people to share their story, open up, and to verbalize their fears, to verbalize their loves, what gets them excited. Because I think that's a big part is the skill of feeling articulation. It's not easy to be able to express to people how you feel. That's one of those things I've gotten with age to an extent is, yeah, I could express more discontent in a more direct way or in a more, I don't know, helpful way. But there's something about that you have to learn. And that's not an easy lesson, particularly when, again, you have this sense of insecurity that's out there.
Yeah. But that's what I think is really powerful about the self-awareness that comes with the EQI. So it being a data-driven way of really looking at how you're not just thinking about you, but how you're thinking about others and being aware of how your emotions not just impact you, but it may impact the others around you. That's the one thing I'm so curious about because it's data-driven. It's not based on my feelings or based on anecdotal stuff that's been done for a long period of time. It's validated, it's verified. So I'm excited about it. Now I'm actually thinking maybe one of the next conversations is we can just get on and talk about emotional intelligence.
Sure.
And the views on it. So maybe that's something that we can actually come back to. What keeps you motivated now?
Let's see. Motivated now. I think there's getting it. I think I see my next phase is that the village elder mentor type of coaches type of thing. I want to get to that level where I'm starting it. I'm finally doing a monthly meeting of EQI users, getting opportunity to hear from people. Yeah, do you have a report out there you want to share with us to talk about? So that's something I've always wanted to do, and I'm doing it. So getting that started is going to be a lot of fun. But motivation, I think it's always feeling you're helping somebody. Man, I wake up in the morning, it's 10 o'clock on a gray morning, and I get an EQI report, and I got to talk to someone who I can see from the report, this is not a happy person. This is someone who just doesn't like what they're doing or whatever. And I start the call 9 o'clock in the morning, and next thing I know, it's 9:45, and I feel great, and the person feels great. I've given we've had some laughs maybe, or we've spoken about something. Maybe a tear or two that happens sometimes when you're talking to people about their lives. But there's always usually an uplift I could leave them with. You know? And to realize that, it's validated. I'm giving you some kind of validation. Life's a stream, right? So for the last 45 minutes, you jumped out, you dried off, we talked for a little while, now jump back in.
That's actually interesting. I like that. Dealing with emotions all the time and being in that space, does it drain you? Because I've had some assessments where I've only went into one assessment knowing it would go bad, and it did go bad.
Yeah.
But then there are certain assessments where individuals just open up, and sometimes I don't have a container. How do you manage that?
To tell you the truth, I didn't. Once I had a client last year, I did an EQI debrief, and the guy said, he's ex-military. God love him for what he'd been through. And he said, I suffer from PTSD. And he said, so I have some incredible dreams. So what's the last question you want to ask someone like that? Last question you want to ask is, what are your dreams like? And what I do, I ask him, so what are your dreams like? And he told me, and we cried together. Oh, I didn't expect that, man. I was just trying to do the. But you really want to know, John? Okay, yeah, tell me about one. He told me about he's a Marine. They got there late. He told me he knows the names of the soldiers that were dying. Oh, it's just incredible. But yeah, I didn't take my own advice. And I tell people, don't play psychotherapist here. Don't ask a question. If you're going to ask a question, open a person up, you better be prepared to sew them back together in the same amount of time. And this was, man, we were on there for an hour and a half, and that was like,
yeah.
Whew, but that was cathartic. I'm not looking for good answers. I'm looking to provide some information. I'm looking to help you wherever you can. But this was someone who had suffered. I felt it. And for some reason,
How did you sew yourself back together? after that?
Oh, geez. When I went to spoke to Debbie. She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "No." What happened? A guy talked about PSD. You want to hear about it? She goes, "No, don't tell me about it."
That's what I was going to say. I hope she was getting compensated for creating that third space for you.
Just send me an invoice. Right?
Yeah, that's the right thing to do there.
Yeah, that's that energy, right? Took his energy between Debbie and I. We just were able to get rid of it. That's deep, heavy stuff that I'm not looking for it, but for some reason, that moment of that question, I can't tell you where it came from, but it was beautiful. Would I do it over again? Probably, because it came out successful.
How do you help people to change? There are so many people who you would actually have these conversations with and it will go nowhere.
Yep.
Like, what's the difference between the person who will pick up the report and then go a little bit further? And before I say that, I would say, it took me a while. So the first book you recommended was Search Inside Yourself. It took me a while to read that book.
Yep.
But I must confess to you, I think Tim Ferriss says that your favorite book is not the one that you enjoy reading the most, it's the one that you've gifted the most. And I've gifted that more than any other book.
Yep.
But it took me a little while to read it. And it's so powerful. But what is that thing that you think move people forward after you give them this awareness, you give them this information, this data? What's the difference between the person who does something with it and the person who does nothing?
Yeah, it's funny because I had someone really motivated they had to make a decision. Am I going to go down the people track or am I going to go with the people or the staff, right? Am I going to manage people or am I going to be a staff professional? Because Comcast, certain technical organizations, you got to make that decision. And I sent a copy of Search Inside Yourself, and the guy said he credits that book for helping him make that decision because it helped him step back and realize he needed more information. He needed more feedback. So emotional self-awareness, it's being open to other people's perception of it. Not agreeing with them, at least being open, at least hearing it. If you hear it enough, then there might be something to do with it. There might be some consistency there about your change. But I love people that will reach out to me to say, yeah, there's a certain aspect of my management style I've gotten feedback on. I don't want to show up like that anymore. Talk about it. So once they have that awareness, those are the best clients. They really are.
So that you're saying, is it that it's intrinsic then? So you can't help someone to want it.
You can't. There has to be sometimes a little bit of fear involved. Fear is not a negative emotion, not a bad emotion for some people. Fear it gets you focused. I know some people have reached out to me and say, hey, listen, if I don't turn around my performance in 90 days, I'm gone. Can you help me? Other people, let's say there's motivation there. So you got to break it down and see what the issues are. But someone who has that fear is, again, it's one of those things where stuff's happening around here and I want to share what's going on and I want to tell you exactly, I want to dump everything right here and I want you to help work through what the next step should be. Can you do that with me? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. What's cool though, I think the one line I took from you, and I think I ran with it quickly, you said, if you're not asking, what are you assuming? We were talking about that idea of being open to new information, being open to new thinking, being open to just hearing someone else. How do you actualize that now? Like, it's really interesting for me because it's something that it forces that 15 extra seconds that I'm listening or I'm waiting to get additional information, being mindful about the question I'll ask. It's grounded in that if I'm not asking, what am I assuming? What's your constitution with that now?
It came to me from a professor in graduate school. He's the one who made me a listener because there was a moment in graduate school, my first session, where I just wasn't listening. And I could see him right in front of me. The way it was structured was that I would meet with the client, do an hour session, and meet with the PhD the next day to do the debrief. So I meet with the client for the first session, I take all my notes, and I meet the next day with the PhD. So the PhD says, okay, John, how was your first session? I said, the client said this, and I said this, and the client said this, and I said this, and the client said this, and I said this. And he just shook his head in disgust. He just couldn't believe it. So I said, what's the matter? He said, John, do you own a pipe? I said, no. He said, listen, do me a favor. Go out this afternoon and buy a pipe. And every time you want to say something in your session, stick it in your mouth. Because every time you want to say something, you're not listening to your client. So I realized, okay, I wasn't listening. I wasn't there. I was thinking of my response to help you. So that's what realized. I know when I'm listening, when I'm not. You'll see me sometimes I go like this. I put my hand over my mouth. So that's why it reminds me to listen, make notes, that kind of stuff. So to me, that's something where every day I got to remind myself that because I get caught up in my own thoughts.
Yeah, someone who's probably listening now is going to go, Nigel never shuts up. But, that's fine. I'm working on it, though. I'm working on it. So I like to end the conversations with your EQI and
Okay.
what are you learning?
Yeah, it's funny because of all the scores, my lowest one has always been impulse control. Because I like to get projects started, but not necessarily finished. So there's a lot of stuff I used to get going. So that's still my lowest. And in flexibility, it's also a little that's on the high side. But I think when I think of the EQI over with this one in particular, this one, when I looked at the coach's report and all that, this guy's full of himself. This guy's a little bit too much of a. If this guy was applying for a score, I'd have to bring him in for another interview. This guy really a people person? Is he? This is good. And,
I would. So you're questioning your report. Okay.
And here's the thing: when I see a guy with a man or woman with high EQI scores, before I meet them, I kind of say, "Is this person as good as they think they are?" And after 5 minutes, they are.
Okay.
They really are that sincere. They really are that connected.
So what would you say the biggest strengths then that would pop out from it?
Yeah, I think it's funny. Sometimes at what point is your strength play against you, right? So reality testing, that goes both ways, which I could reality testing, I could ask really good questions, but sometimes you don't want to know the answers to these questions. You know what I mean? You look around the world, you start asking things, and their curiosity, man, wakes you up in the middle of the night.
Right, okay.
So, that's when it plays. That's when you need some of these others. That's when you need emotional self-awareness to do some deep breathing, some 4x4 to go back to sleep. So that's why emotional self-awareness, it's a gift and a curse, because it's you and your emotions and your emotional soup that you build every day and you're trying to unravel at night. So to me, I think the other thing I always learn about is brain functioning, and we're learning about the brain and all that. To me, that's a whole area of study. I would love to be able to go deeper. But looking at the report, I think it's that emotional self-awareness. It's knowing that, it's having that confidence that I'm going to be able to help somebody.
And what are you working on, though? From the report, what's the one thing that you're working on?
I think it's reality. As high as reality testing is, I want to be able to do more EQI certification. So I'm not asking myself the right questions. That's what it's telling me.
Okay.
If I'm not doing, again, it's not about bringing in clients. It's about different kind of clients, right? It's about certifying coaches to do this work. So there's something I haven't unraveled yet about that market.
So if you're asking too many questions, do you think at some point that's where some limiting beliefs come in?
Yeah, it's funny because some people say you don't ask a lot of questions. You want to ask the right question. That's not me. I ask a lot of questions. I asked you 20 questions and one was the right one. Other people they go right to the right one. So I got to kind of work my way. My wife goes right to the right question. I'm dancing around. That's the question.
Right. Okay. So you're working on the reality testing, and reality testing is confirming that what's happening is real. So you'll keep digging and digging. John, I appreciate the conversation, the insights. Thank you for taking this time to spend with me today, and looking forward to the other conversation. I think we should come back and geek out about emotional intelligence and the way that we often do. John, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. All right. So what I learned from my conversation with John, or what stayed with me after our recording, was that we all have a level of genius in us. I think that was pretty spot on. That conflict happens in environments where people care. And also the importance of having a third space to help you balance the things that are off kilter in your work life and personal life. I'm so grateful for the conversation. I'm so grateful for the time I was able to spend with John. Thank you for staying with us to this point. I appreciate the mental space, the mental energy, if you did get this far. Also, if at all possible and you'd like to connect, check out my website, meinkhelp.com. Maybe there's some way that I can be of service to you, or that I can help you wherever you are on your journey. Again, thank you for listening. And the next show will be coming in about 2 weeks or so. See you then.